Hi, this isn't a book trailer. This is context. I wrote From Triggered to Stability because I've lived inside the system. I didn't write this book from a place because I figured it all out. I wrote this book originally because I was at wit's end with the system. I was at wit's end. I had been medicated. I had been admitted to an acute psychiatric ward, many psychiatric wards, more times than I can probably count. I've been sedated, contained, referred, discharged, and readmissions. It becomes a cycle. That cycle becomes a rhythm. At some point, you stop being seen as a crisis and you become a pattern. Staff recognize your name before they recognize your pain. And something happens internally when that repeats. You just don't leave those admissions behind. They imprint on you. And I'll tell you a little bit about a personal story. I was considered a nuisance patient. That's never written on your file, but you can feel it in the room. This book isn't anti-psychiatry. It isn't anti-medication. I've taken a medication. I've been so sedated I couldn't remember what day of the week it was. Medication can save lives, and it can make a difference. But here's what I started noticing. When relief only arrives at the peak of a crisis, your nervous system learns something. Escalate, and you get attention. Escalate, and you get containment. Escalate, and finally, the noise goes quiet. Not because you're manipulative, not because you want chaos, but because the body reacts before the mind does. Rejection feels like a threat. Disconnection feels like survival. Connection feels like oxygen. And when you're trying to connect to a system that feels mechanical, you can start believing you're to malfunction. That's what this book explores. Not inspirational quotes, not aesthetic recovery slogans, not trauma packaged for marketing. So translation, let me translate that for you. What risk management feels like in your chest at 2 a.m. What containment feels like when the door closes. What discharge feels like when you're not actually stable, just quiet. This is a peer support book for people who are living the experience. It's written for people with lived experience, for the ones who've escalated just to be heard, or for the ones who felt like a file, or for the ones who tried to connect and felt rejected by systems meant to help, and also for clinicians if they find this helpful. But just a reminder to clinicians, this is not to attack you, but to reflect. Because systems don't just manage risk, they shape nervous system. From trigger to stability isn't linear. It isn't clean. It isn't pretty, but it's possible. And this is what it actually looks like.